Okay, connect. So the YouTube Live is up and connecting to MCN6 TV. Okay, and we should be up on MCN6.3, so I'll start the commercial. MCN6, I didn't mean to divide it by 2.
Support for Wrong About Everything comes from Minnesota's credit unions. Credit unions are locally based, member-owned financial cooperatives that return earnings to members through higher savings rates, lower loan rates, and reduced fees. Visit mncun.org for more information.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the Wrong About Everything podcast. I am GOP strategist and Twin City Sugar, Brian McDaniel.
I am former Republican Senate Majority Leader Amy Koch.
And I am not the birthday girl anymore, Allison Bessie.
And I am DFL lawyer lobbyist Matthew Bergeron.
And we are
Wrong About Everything. Hey,
Well,
Matthew.
Allison, is your mic on?
Is this thing on?
Now it is.
It is.
There we go.
It is
I guess you are-
It is now.
No longer without a mic.
I am no longer without a mic, Allison
Bessie.
Bessie.
There you
Thank
go.
you.
Everybody, Matthew Bergeron, the podcast attorney, and that is legally binding, is with us again. He is a veteran of the podcast, but it has been a while. So why don't you remind everybody who you are?
Yeah, no, I am like I said, I'm an attorney and a lobbyist at the legislature. I do a lot of my work in health and human services.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, right. And represent a lot of providers in Medicaid. So it's a you guys might be heard or talked about recently. There's some things going on in the world.
You got some clients. With some things.
we got some stuff going on. But it's been a number of years. But I'm
It's
really
been
excited
years,
to be
hasn't
back.
it, since you've
Yeah,
been-
it's probably been a couple of years.
So loyal fans of the podcast will remember Matthew,
Yeah.
but no. But you're new to
But new fans are coming today.
Exactly.
If you don't know
Yeah.
him, then you're not a loyal fan.
It's like I'm like the B side of one of the original records, right? That everyone looks down on
Well,
others for not knowing.
Well, you're like Stuart Sutcliffe, or you're like the Beatle that no one remembers.
Exactly. There we go.
I was there at the beginning.
That's Mike Franklin. But anyway, everybody, welcome to the Minnesota Credit Union Network studios, deep within the recesses of MBC Studios here in Northeast Minneapolis. We have our very capable, talented, and handsome producer, Gabe Noah, pushing buttons back there for us. And we want to, of course, always direct you to www.wrongabouteverything-podcast.com. And hopefully you're watching us on our YouTube channel, because we would like as many subscribers there. So please like, subscribe, do all that stuff.
Did you share it?
I did share it.
He's the king of sharing.
I share. I'm a sharer.
He's a sharer.
I shared not only on YouTube but also on Facebook.
Oh, you do both,
I don't know.
as far as I know.
Well, as far as I know.
And Instagram.
And
Twitter.
Twitter, or whatever it's called now, X. Yeah. So in any event, we are very happy to have you watching us there. Also, and I hope I didn't offend them with the podcast attorney comment, but we also want to talk to our good friends at Bradshaw and Bryan.
I'm not that kind of attorney.
He's not that
Right.
kind of attorney.
He's a different type of attorney for us.
Their entire team of attorneys and staff is dedicated to providing the legal advice you need, combined with the service and personal attention you deserve. If you have questions about how they can assist you with a personal injury, wrongful death, or criminal defense matter, do not hesitate to contact them. Consultations are free. Please contact them at 800-770-7008 or at minnesotapersonalinjury.com. snitchfund.com. And as always, snitches need not apply.
Yeah, I mean, there are criminal attorneys. Matthew's are like
Yeah, you
business-
don't
our
want me in
business
that
attorney.
courtroom. That's not my skill set.
Yeah.
No, we call Mike if we need.
Absolutely.
Yeah, if we get into trouble. When we get into trouble.
I've done criminal law.
I don't want to call you.
I wouldn't call me either.
You've done too many
I
types of
wouldn't
law
recommend anybody
that I
call
wouldn't
you.
do it.
Yeah.
You dabble. You dabble like, I did that for 6 months.
I'm just saying, hey, if you're a family member or a friend from college and you get a DWI, I can do it. I don't know that you
Yeah.
should, but yeah, well,
All right, well,
Anyway.
I'll go with Mike Bryant.
yeah, that's probably not bad.
Bradshaw
Then.
Bryant.
If you call me, I will direct you to the good people at Bradshaw and Bryant.
There you go.
All right, well, let's get into it. So
Big night.
there was the addressing of Congress last night.
Not the State of the
Not
Union.
the State of the Union. So that is why the name of this episode is Wrong About Addressing Congress, not Wrong About the State of the Union.
So typically, presidents have addressed Congress during like difficult times, right? After declarations of war, after it's typically besides outside the State of the Union, which is constitutionally prescribed, I believe.
Yeah.
Outside of that, addresses to Congress have usually been like big moments. So, to be honest, I was expecting something a little bigger last night. And somebody asked me what I gave, and I gave him a B. I graded him a B because I thought he had a couple very, very good lines. He had a couple new lines. He made the little boy a honorary Secret Service. It had a little Oprah feel to it. Somebody else got a scholarship got to go to the Air Force Academy. Was that right? But most of what he did was like the same thing. If you've gone to Trump rallies or you went to the inauguration or you listened to the inauguration, like there wasn't a lot of new in his speech. He did have like the most new stuff he had was when he discussed Ukraine, which has been an evolving situation since he and Zelensky got into it at the Oval Office. He had some good things to say about the Ukraine, which I was interested in. And then he had, I thought, what was probably his best line was on immigration when he said, you know, they told you in Congress that you needed to have stronger immigration legislation, and what you really all just needed was a new president. Because border crossing's down. I thought it was a good line. I thought it was very effective on one of his best issues. So you know, he's definitely a showman, but I just didn't like. Again, I think of addresses to Congress to be like big agenda setting or to calm the nation or whatever. And this was just, and I thought,
well,
I just don't know what
it's been a busy 43 days.
6 weeks in, he's still with the partisan, divisive stuff. I mean, like, I just thought it was beneath the chamber, the way he attacked. I mean, it's the same stuff. It's the same stuff, but he's at the dais of the House, and it was like, really?
Well, if we think about addresses to Congress, States of the Union, things like that, in a more conventional sense, it lays out an agenda.
That's what I'm saying.
And then it's usually an attempt to kind of use that bully pulpit to move Congress towards action in line with that agenda.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
It was pretty clear that the president didn't have a whole lot of desire in getting Congress to move forward with an agenda. The president was laying out what the president thought he was able to do unilaterally, taking credit for what he thought he was doing unilaterally.
The greatest presidency, the second being Washington.
But I think that
6 weeks.
I think that's why part of why it feels so different is because it wasn't here's my plan, here's what we're going, and now I'm going to stump for it to get Congress to do what I think they should be doing in that kind of classic conventional sense. It was just like, here's what I'm doing, here's why I'm great, and that
here's why God spared me.
He did say that.
I know.
He did.
Yeah.
But just like the ideologues, Pocahontas, like just the left-wing lunatics. I mean, but as you said, Matthew, like it's reflective of how he has operated in office, which is passing executive orders with zero regard for the congressional branch to making a lot of these changes that he is doing.
By the way, every president has been doing for decades now.
And that's Congress.
Which drives me insane.
It does.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Amy and I were talking to a client group last night, and one of the things I brought up is just how offended I get by that. by the abdication by Congress of their Article 1 of the Constitution duties, letting the president use and abuse executive orders. And this goes back, this is Reagan and
Dick Cheney has been the constructor of the growing the power of the executive branch since he worked in Nixon's office. Like that's the whole movie. Dick is just about how he has. Well, it's actually Vice, but how he envisioned growing the power of the executive to need Congress less and less, and that's why he was in so many administrations after administration after administration.
Actually, the modern presidency started with the New Deal, but. Anyway, sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I will push back a little bit and say, though, that while I absolutely agree both in the historical description and the frustration with the trend towards the growing executive,
that's a little disturbance.
That's not to say that what this president is doing is not substantially removed from and further than
it's
the most recent presidents.
Yeah, well, it's kind of the same thing I say too.
Even beyond the first Trump presidency.
About like
this is different.
Like the devolution of debate. I won't say that Donald Trump hasn't exacerbated it more than previous presidents, but I also won't say that he invented it. So he has maybe exacerbated the use of the EOs. Here in the first 6 weeks. I also won't say that he's the first person who thought of it doing this way.
I appreciate
the question I have
this letter just got it a little while ago.
So
simultaneously, we've had serious
agreeing
discussions
for
with
the
Russia
moment that
and have received strong
Donald
signals
Trump's
that they are ready for peace.
demeanor last
Wouldn't that be
night
beautiful?
was not collegial,
Wouldn't that be
was not necessarily looking to kind of build consensus for a platform, and that using Pocahontas and as a derogatory term, and the same things that Allison was bringing up as far as how about the left wing radicals or lunatics or whatever he uses. My question is, why do the Democrats take the bait? Because to this point, pointing out some of the lesser virtues, to be polite, of the President of the United States has not necessarily embiggened the popularity of the Democrats. So with Al Green had to be removed from the chamber for shouting out, for shouting out. They had signs and they had this and that. So I kind of think that while we could say that certainly they are being
State Fair fans.
Yeah, exactly. But we can certainly say that
I do declare.
But we certainly we certainly can say that Donald Trump has been baiting them. But why is it that they're taking the bait, not having their own message other than look at all the stuff that Donald Trump says, and not standing for the cancer kid or clapping? I mean, that's just like that lets people say, well, look, they won't agree with anything that Trump does, which is one of the things that he
literally what he said at the beginning of his speech.
And he did say smile more.
And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country.
Yeah, it goes over great.
One second, guys. I'm hearing that the audio of the video that's up now is over our talking. That's what someone just texted me, Gabe.
All right.
There we go.
It was an ABC News. Trump airs grievances. So basically, it was Festivus. I didn't realize that Festivus was December.
But it was. He had a lot of problems with these people. Sorry, we'll get closer to the mic. And we were going to hear about him and how great the last 6 weeks have been and the actions that he has taken unilaterally. And I just, to your question, why do the Democrats take the bait? I don't know. We have not effectively figured out how to respond in a compelling and precise way to what he is doing.
To be fair, neither of the Republicans.
That is true.
Finally, we just went, because we tried, and people kept losing, and then finally we just went, oh, okay, we're just with him.
Yeah, I mean,
to be fair.
It's one of those situations where, it feels like they're stuck in a damned if they do, damned if they don't, right?
Yes.
If they hold their decorum and treat it like a presidential address to Congress, and they stand at the appropriate moments, and they make the appropriate acknowledgments, and they sit quietly with frowny faces like minority caucuses or out of power parties always do, then they've essentially legitimized
Yeah.
some of the behaviors and made it seem as if it were any other administration or any other presidential address. Alternatively, if they react either as they did or in some other maybe better organized, better orchestrated opposition demonstration, then they're not reacting with the appropriate, now suddenly decorum becomes a thing that folks want to see, regardless of the behavior on the other side of the aisle by
Right, and
members of
this is
Congress.
the problem of the devolution. I was thinking about this because I watched last night, right, and literally had members of Congress had to be removed, and some walked out, which is fine, whatever. And I thought, tracing it back, I was like, when did that start? Like, when did it start? And I don't. Again, it's sort of like hard to care. But remember when someone stood up?
The South Carolina guy.
Yep, who stood up for Obama.
You lied.
Yeah, he said you lied. That was.
You lied. That was sort of the beginning of now we get to be obnoxious on the floor of in the addresses to Congress. Like that was kind of the first I can remember. And the problem is, anytime anybody breaks in his,
it was Joe Wilson.
Joe Wilson stood up and pointed at Obama and said, "You lie." And ever since then, there's been sort of like this downgrading of how we're going to act in all areas. And that's just what happens. And when institutions are broken, there's a reason that they're important. And this is not to be old fashioned. They're because they hold together sort of a moral code for society. And as soon as one person does one thing, then the next time the other side gets to go, well, they did it, so we get to do it. And in fact, sometimes your folks demand it of you because it's like, well, they treated you like garbage, so now you got to treat them like extra garbage. And then, oh, well, we can't possibly stand up for the cancer kid because then we're legitimizing the whole thing. No, at some point, you just need to be leaders and say, we're going to stand up for things that are good. We're gonna call out when things are bad. And I honestly think, and maybe it's naive, I think you would do better. I think that you would get more support.
I would also like to say that probably we shouldn't call him the cancer kid. That's probably not very nice. But I don't
the
recall
newest
his name.
member of the United States Secret Service.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. And youngest member, I hope.
And I think he has come up with a 5-point plan to make sure that that the president doesn't get shot.
I was just going to say,
I do think they
recruitment's down,
They
man.
need some help there. I mean, the one specific thing, I thought it was terrible that Al Green and other people were making a spectacle, but I also really, really, really bristle at the Pocahontas comment because not that Elizabeth Warren is someone who I have respect for, I don't, but the Pocahontas thing is one, played out. Two, it is so just offensive. I just wish that would be something that he would, make fun of her in a different way, and I'm probably fine because she is someone who deserves a little bit of ridicule for some of her past fibbing and whatnot. But the Pocahontas thing, I think it really just is too gross for.
Yeah, it's super racist. Like
DJ
stop
Daniel is 13-year-old that is the newest member of the Secret Service.
DJ Danielson.
DJ Daniel. Yeah, that is super played out. Also the thing with, and I know nobody can ever talk to Trump about this because I've seen too many speeches, and he really thinks that when he's up there for 2 hours that people, I know very strong MAGA people that are like, could he stop talking now? Like, it's too much. And yet he thinks that it's all very entertaining. The best I ever heard, and he went on for 3 hours, was a conversation when he sat down with Rogan before the campaign. And I don't know if anybody else listened to that. I listened to all 3 hours of it. I like Rogan. I just listened to Woody Harrelson. I listened to Rogan. And that was some of the best stuff I'd heard from Trump because it was like the most self-effacing, the most honest I'd ever heard him be. And when he was that, I was like, oh, okay, I kind of get it. And I sort of bought in. And then I see him at these rallies and I just don't get it. I don't find it, I just find it obnoxious. I find it petty. I find it beneath the office of a president. And I don't understand how you can be the most powerful man in the world and still be petty. It's just, it is beneath you. It is,
He's been a petty man his whole life. I just
don't understand how you can attain that level and still be punching down? What do you gain from
Well,
that?
other people can't do this. I mean, this is something that is
very unique.
It's very Trump, and it's something that hasn't always worked. This is something that he has kind of perfected. And by perfected it, I mean he's been very effective with it. Because and one of the things that I think I've talked about on the show before is that I was reading a book not too long ago by Jeff Pearlman, who's a fantastic writer, writes mostly on sports, but not just sports. It was about the USFL, which is the United States Football League, which was a football league that was meant to rival the NFL when I was a kid. And what it was it played
Way back in the day.
Way back in the day. So it
and
played,
Trump was an owner or something.
it
right?
played in the spring, and then in the second season, Trump became the owner of the New Jersey Generals. And he did to the USFL kind of what he did to the Republican Party, in that he came in.
Bankrupted it.
He came in, he annoyed everybody, everybody made fun of him, and then they all did exactly what he wanted. And it wasn't to the benefit of the league, because he then, Donald Trump, wanted them to then move from the spring to the fall, directly challenge the NFL, because he thought that the NFL would so fear him that the NFL would give him a franchise in the NFL. To kind of bring him in there. And that didn't work. They lost. They won a court case against the NFL. They got no money. The league went away. And so he hasn't always been successful at the things he has tried, but what he does now works. And yes, he lost an election. Yeah, I get that. But now if you look at, he just does whatever he wants. And anyone who kind of challenges him on it, that's who falls to the wayside. And I think we're seeing that right now with Marco Rubio, who I saw an article today saying that as Secretary of State, he's being sidelined now because of kind of how some of the Zelensky stuff went on Friday. And it's like most of us would look at what happened with Zelensky and Vance and Trump in the Oval Office on Friday, and we would say that was, pick whose fault it is, but that was an embarrassing chapter in American foreign policy. But somehow it's Marco Rubio who now is going to be the one that gets left outside the room where it happens, not the people who probably were the bad actors.
What's hard for Democrats is it's all so overwhelming. The harm, the harm, and it's hard to when you just laid that out. I was just compounding harms and fear, and it's hard to come up with. I think hopeful. I've always said we need to stop just berating Trump and talk about what we believe in and what we envision and what we want to do and actions. But it's so chaotic, and I know.
Which, by the way, is part of the plan. Is definitely part of the
100%.
The playbook. Sure.
And other governments have done this too in their playbooks as they.
I think one of the things is we haven't seen, there's generational transitions in every industry, in every space right now. And, we see that in Congress. We see that in our national leaders. Obviously, that process needs to complete itself if you look at who started the last campaign on the ticket, right? I mean, we're in that. But the Democrats on a national level haven't found its next leader, right? There hasn't been that unifying voice. And it's not necessarily that it's there's 5 or 6 folks, we don't know who it is, and, iron sharpens iron, and they're all, pushing together. But we haven't necessarily seen, and maybe over the next 12 months, as we look towards a midterm, we will start to figure out who those faces and voices might be. But it's very clear that the Democrats don't know who that is. Nobody has found the message that has elevated themselves into that position yet. And without that, leadership, really, there isn't a unifying leader at the moment within the Democratic Party who can stand opposite the president and say, no, this is an alternative.
And I think that's an excellent point. One that I'd like to I'd like to explore a little bit. So, Joe Biden before the fall, had a long
on the bike, or which other phone?
I think
down
this season.
Anyway, before his cognitive decline, let me say that he certainly had a long career of kind of he knew what to do. Nancy Pelosi, obviously, who is reached the end of her time in Congress, was a very capable,
amazing,
leader.
Brilliant.
But now it appears that the most vocal leaders
is it Hakeem Jeffries
with the I would say it's even the more progressive wing than Hakeem Jeffries, and maybe it's that's who the media gravitates towards, but like the AOCs and whatnot. But the AOCs are not going to be the ones that kind of restore the respect and the vibrancy of the Democrats. That's not going to be them. Who kind of comes? I mean, AOC isn't going to bring back the blue collar white men, people who have.
Well, wasn't that what Tim Walz was going to do?
But that was a bad choice.
And that's the debate that we're having. Like, do we keep going after the moderate Democrat, a former Democrat, and bring them back, or do we have AOC as a new, more profound leader? I think she is one of the best speakers, and her ability to deliver a message and a vision and a plan and go after the true root cause issues. I think she's the best on our bench, but she is continually excluded from leadership and positions in the party, because I think it is scary. We're just at a junction.
And I guess I would also push back a little bit on the idea that just because the Harris Walz ticket wasn't successful, that Governor Walz wasn't successful in some portions of it. I mean, like, people vote for the top of the ticket. There were all kinds of issues.
I think he took unnecessary blame for the train wreck that was.
Well, and to think that
how to do it.
A governor added to the ticket as late in the cycle as he was going to suddenly swing 9 historic Upper Midwest.
Even by the way that you could change horses midstream like that and just be fine.
Well, but I think my point was specifically to the bringing blue collar white men. That was more what I thought, that Walz, who in Minnesota had continually been pushed to the progressive left, that Congressman Tim Walz would have been exactly the person that would have done that. The guy who had the A+ rating with NRA and was much more moderate. I just think that I think it was in hindsight, this is true. I don't know that I even would have said this when it happened. So I'm not trying to be disingenuous with it, because I didn't see this either. But in hindsight, I think that he had been pushed so far to the left in Minnesota that by the time they said, okay, now go be the old Congressman Tim Walz, he wasn't that person anymore and had too much of a track record. And that's world according to Brian. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying that's how I envision it, or how I see it.
Yeah, and I don't necessarily see it that the governor was pushed far to the left and couldn't come back to the middle to be a palatable vice presidential candidate. I mean, I think the governor was running on what vision he and the Democratic legislators that he had been working with had tried to brought for the state. Some of the policy reform, some of the initiatives, some of the priorities that they had a track record of, he was trying to bring to the table, because it's really hard for anyone coming out of Congress right now, a senator on either side of the aisle, to point to accomplishments or to point to a vision that is like clearly theirs because they are one of a legislative body, right?
You're one of 400.
And so, I mean, to some extent, I think that was the effort. It obviously wasn't sufficient for the Harris Walz ticket, but whether it was a failure of that project versus a failure of a myriad of other things that happened with the Democratic effort to elect a president last year, it's hard to tell. I do think when we're talking about leaders and generational transitions, I think your comments on the Congresswoman are very astute. And I also wonder about Secretary Buttigieg as someone who's markedly younger, very intelligent, very charismatic, and as someone who has gone into a state like Iowa and been successful, a state that is no liberal bastion by any measure, and probably even less so now than it was when he won there. And so,
he could be your guy. He's the guy that goes on Fox News and explains things in no-nonsense terms.
He's excellent. He is an excellent communicator.
But the fact that neither one of them nor anyone else are very clearly the face going forward is kind of still, I think, where the Democratic Party is struggling, because you have to have a message, but you have to have a messenger as well. And right now, we don't know that we have that.
Yeah, and I don't think we have figured out the media landscape effectively. You know, we the traditional, it's all online, and Democrats, the right has done a really good job of caricaturizing the left. They're so good at it that even when we do have good messengers, it's so easy just to discredit that. Discredit us, because at the end of the day, our policies are popular. The things that Tim Walz did as governor with Speaker Hortman and Majority Leader Dietzig and Murphy are very popular. They pull well. And you know what Donald Trump talks about? A lot of those things. Like, he has a lot of progressive ideas that he talks about in his 3-hour rallies on his podcast, and he seems rational.
Like tariffs.
But I mean, it's we have not successfully found the messenger and put them in the platforms that reaches people in a way that is, again, like, the right can't just immediately discredit.
Well, he's done this so well, and this is a part of even that address last night. He breaks all the boundaries when it comes to communicating, and he communicates very directly to people, which he has always done. First, he started with Twitter, right? He would just go to Twitter. He was the first candidate and the first president and the first leader in elected office that would just take everything to Twitter. And so every day he set the agenda by simply sending out a tweet. He'd get up in the morning, send out a couple of tweets about what he was thinking about, and guess what? That was the news cycle for the next 24 hours.
Yeah,
whatever
he'd said.
It was that, but also there was an element where, because the concept of a Trump presidency was so wild when he ran the first time, every speech got live broadcast.
Not as much now. Yeah.
Well, now he's the
night.
presumptive nominee.
Yeah.
But what I'm talking about is when he ran the first time and it was a field of 13 Republicans.
Yes.
And he was polling at 1%.
The cameras cut to him every time out of what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. And so that was a level of earned media that no other candidate has ever got. I mean, so I don't know if it's going to take Tom Hanks or Oprah Winfrey running as Democrat in order to get that kind of let's see what they say now. Or you probably need something even more wild and extreme than either of them. And that celebrity outside of the political realm what just earned media by default in a way that nobody else has ever been able to do.
How much of Minnesota's own Ken Martin, how much of his job is going to be to identify and cultivate that whoever is the next kind of Democrat leader, whether it be Buttigieg, Gavin Newsom, Slotkin, who gave the post address comment on your part. I mean, who is that kind of one of his jobs that he's going to have?
I don't know if it's so much identifying the person, but identifying the strategy to elevate the person. Democrats do not like to be told from the top down who we need to be supporting. It hasn't been effective over the years. So once it becomes self-identified, but the party needs to have, I think, a strategic plan around media.
Yeah, I think it's less about identifying that individual than it is growing a bench, because the Democrats are going to need candidates in congressional seats. They're going to need candidates to run for Senate seats. They're going to need to have folks that are able to step out on the national level. But I also think part of it is setting an environment where once you've identified, or once 5 or 6 individuals have been identified, you don't have a situation where they just destroy themselves in competition for that limelight. And having somebody who's not jockeying for that position themselves to be able to set up a process whereby folks can compete for a nomination in 4 years, but do so in a way that doesn't, devolve or drag everyone down. I don't necessarily know that 8 years ago we had a process where we saw candidates competing for the presidency. It was kind of what happens next? When you had that stage of 8 or 9 folks.
Yeah. We're still dealing with the Bernie-Hillary faction and the distrust in the party and the process and the does it even matter? And that's just kind of,
You do guys have those weirdo super delegates, which are basically to override the will of the regular.
Do they have super delegates anymore?
Yeah. They just don't call them that anymore.
Okay.
In fact, they don't talk about them.
But
they still got them.
but part of
I haven't needed them for a while, so.
but part of the difference between the two parties in that process is the fact that Democrats allocate the national delegates proportionally. So if I win 52-49, or if I win, 35-33-33, the delegates are proportioned 35, 34, 33.
The super delegates are?
No, the delegates in a state. Where in a Republican primary, it's a plurality. If I get 26% in a 5-candidate race, I get all of them, right? Yeah. And so, that fundamentally changes. It can keep it kind of chaotic much longer.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. The way the Democrats do.
Yeah, and there's pros and cons to that.
Yeah.
And and the Democrats don't have to have that person identified, in March of 2025, but I think at some point they're going to have to. And,
definitely, you can lay low now, right? Let the Republicans kind of.
And it can't be.
Let you all govern in your trifecta.
Well,
let's see.
Well, if the Democrats would sit back, I totally believe, and I see where you're going with this, and I agree with you. If they would just sit back and kind of make the Republicans have to prove that they can lead, that probably would be a decent strategy. I think I was talking to Matthew beforehand. I think Pelosi, when talking about Trump, said you just can't give him oxygen. Mm-hmm. And I think that on the state level and on the federal level, I think that would be effective. But I also think that the Democrats can't get out of their own way. I don't want to get into too much detail on this because we've talked about it on the podcast many other times. But this week, both on the federal level and in the state level, they're debating banning transgender athletes from girls' sports, and that's it's an 80-20 issue writ large. I think that the devil is always in the details about what's in the exact bills, and I get that part. But I think the Democrats just can't help but take the bait and go out and kind of identify themselves as just super on the super left wing, kind of out of step with a lot of general voters, without educating the general voters more on what exactly they're talking about. I think they're doing a much better job on the Musk and Medicaid, Medicare things than they are on some of the social issues, which I think just get kind of, hijack's the wrong word, but kind of led by the progressive left, which then gives the Republicans the ability to say, look, they're out of step with what you're talking about. Not all at once. All right, moving on.
No.
Oh, sorry.
No, go.
Well, I guess, sure, I'll step up and take it. Two things.
I think this just proves
right?
I'm right.
Well, but part of it is you talk about just sitting back and letting the Republicans lead, and then but that would necessitate Republican Congress doing something, right, and actually leading on things. And I know we've seen a budget resolution out of the House.
We'll see if they get one done on the 14th.
Exactly, but part of it is I think that has been one of the greatest concerns is the fact that Republican members of Congress, particularly in the Senate, seemed more than willing to abdicate some of their opportunities and authorities to the president instead of wading in and saying, what should our foreign aid budget be? What should our budget be on these things? They've kind of let go. And so there's a measure of waiting to see what a Republican trifecta does only works if there's going to be a Republican trifecta that tries to do something as opposed to allowing an executive to continue to set the course kind of unilaterally. And the thing I will say about the social issues and the narrative issues, some of these things are so intrinsic to an individual, so deeply personal, their identity, their family's identity, their community, that to see them attacked the way the president's rhetoric has and others have at times, the emotional response to that is always going to transcend political strategy. Mm-hmm. And so while the party needs to find narratives to balance the human rights platforms and the equal justice platforms that it has, there's always going to be a tension point when it comes to how things are talked about, because for the first, in the last 10 years, folks of a lot of communities that have never ever had a voice now have a voice, and so there is always going to be a personal, because it is their lives, right? And so I'm not going to sit here and talk about how narratives need to be crafted to because that's just not who I am, and that's not, I think, the place of the party. But I do think it is important to talk about things, particularly for folks that look like myself, and saying like these are members of our communities, these are members of our families, and this is how they're feeling. And this is what those words, those rhetorics, and those actions legislatively or on social media mean to them. And so I think it's imperative that there's space for that while still trying to craft a national and statewide narrative of this is where we as Democrats think we need to go as a state, as a nation. So,
yeah, I wasn't trying to avoid the discussing of trans kids in sports because it is it polls very well. We learned during the election that it was a compelling and persuasive issue, and it was on people's TVs every night, and just the creating the boogeyman out of trans kids and transgendered individuals. But even though it polls 80-20, as you said, Brian, to Matthew's point, and it is a very small sector of society, and it is part of democratic values. And what I will love about our party is probably the messiest part of it, but it is elevating the most probably marginalized, smallest voices to give it a platform, to give it influence, and to elevate policy to protect people. It is a newer concept for people, and that takes time to understand. And what has been challenging on the debate, particularly with trans kids in sports, is just such a broad brush when there is significant amount of nuance, which is so fun and easily digestible for people to understand. But the way it's been broadly, the right is so quick to say, see, it's this and this, but it isn't. And, you know.
But it's not just the right. If the polls are right, and let's say it's not 80%, let's say it's 75%. So
the right
so 75% of America is just what?
No. I mean, like, but those that are perpetuating a public.
I'm not saying you're saying this.
No. Those that are like putting money behind a public message and rally. I mean, the rally on the Minnesota Capitol steps yesterday about transgendered youth in sports. It was the America First Policy Institute. So it's like that is clearly a right aligned, That's not a moderate, bipartisan think tank. Those that are putting money behind this because they know it influences people to their side is the right. So they're not going about it.
Sure. I mean, the left and the right do that, right? There's groups that are on the left.
But we need to move on. But I also think that where the Democrats are correct is on a lot of these issues is the need for more empathy. And I think that's where the Republicans drop the ball a lot, is with the empathy part of these marginalized communities. And I'll absolutely admit that. And somewhat, I have transitioning people in my family. I love them. I respect them. I'll call them whatever they want. But I think that where the progressive left or the uber progressive left has just kind of lost their way on this is that they go beyond treating people with respect and empathy to the point of requiring people to believe a set of biological factors that maybe in 10, 20 years you guys will be proven right on this, but right now doesn't pass the eye test for a lot of people, and people don't like being told you have to believe something if it's not something that they generally believe, and I think that happens
or even like pronouns, right? Like
pronouns, but even in the debate yesterday, just to
sort of like telling you what you need to not only think. Well, say all of it.
But just to finish my thought, but like yesterday or whatever day it was that they had the debate, equating this bill to genocide, it's not the right. It's the messaging that is. People feel that, some people do, but it's hyperbolic for the people that are not part of that community, and I think that it distracts from the message. Not that I make your message, not that I get to decide your message, not that I'm in any way the person who's intended to receive that message and act upon it, but I think that is one of the things that is kind of, the Democratic brand right now is bad, even when a time where Republicans, I still think, are fumbling the ball on foreign policy and many other things.
Yeah, we're not setting our narrative.
Yeah,
We're letting you guys define it for us.
Yeah, that is true.
Yes.
Let's end it there and go to plugs. Amy, we'll sit back and wait.
No. Okay. All right. Well.
You were on Fancy Stuff last night.
All right. So Brian and I, every Tuesday, are on the BS podcast. And yes, last night I did the 6:30 and the 10 o'clock with Carol Levin. Also was on Al Jazeera about 11:30, so whatever time that is, Greenwich Mean Time, for folks over there. And let's see, what else? Every Friday you can catch Jeff Hayden and I go on Vanita Sakar, WCCO. We call it the Capitol Clash. It's a segment that breaks down the week at the Capitol. And I think I might be on Almanac this Friday. I just got a request. I'll respond to that in a sec.
Normally, I'd say I'm a normal person, but last week, made my public television debut on Almanac, which is very exciting. So, and intimidating, but a great opportunity. So maybe they'll have me back, maybe not. But yeah, we'll see. I'm not plugging it this week.
Matthew.
Well, this is my long-anticipated, long-awaited, long-sought-for return to Wrong About Everything. So that's a milestone for me to come back. I don't have. I'm more of a print guy myself, right? But so don't have anything to plug in the immediate future.
All right. Well, as Amy said, she and I do the BS show with Bob Sansevier every Tuesday. I also was on Almanac with Allison and think that she did a fantastic job for her first time being on. I think she let the conversation come to her. And a lot of times when people are on for the first time, they feel very jumpy, like they need to get their point in. And I thought she was very demure,
very mindful.
Very mindful. So
a lady.
A lady. So that was great. And then I guess I would also say that Gabe Noah, the handsome producer of this show, he and I are going to be doing some comedy in Bismarck, North Dakota, because I'm a road comic now. So we're going to be on Friday the 14th, we're going to be in Bismarck, North Dakota. If you're listening from North Dakota, or if you're planning on driving through,
I was going to say go Bison, but there's no sports team there. There's just actual Bison.
It's just Bison. So I guess
you meant.
Run free. And if you're not going to be in Bismarck, but you'd like to, just let us know. You can jump in the car with us and we'll drive you there.
Or somewhere. The road.
Drop you off in Fargo.
Dad, don't take that bait. No one take that bait.
I'm not getting in that car.
Can't promise that you're coming back with us. But anyway, so with that, let's go to I don't know what's happening.
Spanks and Thanks.
Let's go to Spanks and Thanks. Who wants to go first?
I'll go first. So my thank first goes out to USA Today Woman of the Year for Minnesota, our own speaker Lisa Damuth. What an honor! Lisa Damuth, the new Speaker of the Minnesota House, the first Republican female Speaker of the House, the first woman of color Speaker of the House, the first person of color Speaker of the House. So many firsts, and just a fantastic leader. Has been named, I think rightfully so, USA's Today's Woman of the Year, and so I just want to celebrate that. Big fan, and it's great to see. And then my thank, and I'm going to need my lawyer on this, who happens to be sitting right here. So my spank goes out last night. Marjorie Taylor Greene. So everybody was standing at the edge. It's always a strange thing too, right? The president walks down the aisle, and then a bunch of thirsty folks stand at the edge, and they want to touch my hand, touch my hand, and he's always escorted by a few members of Congress, and they all get to shake hands. I don't know. It's just very DC weird to me. But anyway, that's what happens. And Marjorie Taylor Greene always manages to get herself on the aisle, and she's always wearing something. And she was wearing a red hat but it didn't say what you think it said. Doesn't say Make America Great. Didn't say 45, 47. It said Trump was right about everything. And what I'm wondering is it some sort, we do have I believe, some sort of a patent.
We do have a copyright.
Do we have a copyright, trademark? And could we?
Wrong about
do
everything.
We have a case?
Wrong about everything is in fact trademarked.
Thank you.
You own that mark.
Okay.
And
we are correct.
Listen,
Hold on.
And this is not the first time that we've looked into some national leaders. Interestingly enough, during the last Trump administration, who had launched. Was it Scaramucci that was going to launch a podcast to write about everything? And
yeah,
we're waiting for that one too.
Yeah, he never did. He lasted on
that idea lasted almost as long as the Scaramucci.
Yeah, it was a half a Scaramucci, and he was
exactly.
Done. Yeah,
but I'm just saying I'm not going to comment on pending investigation.
Okay, well I'm going to spank it and put a little bookmark in it, and then we'll have some conferral later. Or what do you do with a lawyer?
You get billed.
I don't think that's a word. Conferral? I don't know. Maybe it is.
We'll confer later. Thank you very much. She's spanked.
What's next?
I'll
and maybe
go.
sued.
I mean, I would love that. I'll participate with dollars. I only have one spank, I don't have a spank this week. Just a thank, and that is to Minneapolis City Council member Andrea Jenkins announced this week that she was not going to seek re-election this fall. There is a city election for mayor and all council members, and it's just. She has been a fixture around City Hall since 2001. She started as a policy aide for Robert Lilligren, and then I met her when I started working at City Hall, and she was working for Council Vice President Elizabeth Glidden. And then when Elizabeth Glidden didn't run again, she decided to actually get an election certificate herself, even though she had done incredible work as one of the first Black transgendered elected officials in the country. She is a beautiful person. I always said my favorite thing about her, and the thing that awes me, she will remember everybody's name after meeting them once, and she will always greet people by their name, because she is one of those people who truly brings the humanity to the work. Brian, when you're talking about empathy, this is one of the most empathetic women. And just a trailblazer in the trans community. And it's a huge loss for the city. She also has been publicly battling MS.
That is a terrible disease.
Which is a terrible disease. She represents Ward 8, and it's kind of the epicenter for the murder of George Floyd in George Floyd Square, which is a community that she has lived in for decades. And obviously that has taken a toll as she's navigated leading, and also incredibly personally painful too. Working in City Hall during George Floyd, but then to be a Black council member from that ward, the amount of pressure and expectations on her was significant. So it's a huge loss for the city of Minneapolis. She has done an incredible amount of service as a staff person and as a leader, and I just want to thank her for that.
Very good.
All right.
Matthew?
So we've talked a little bit about, I'll start with my thank, and we've talked a little bit today about the value and quality of our discourse in politics. We've talked about the use of tweets and social media to set the narrative, and kind of the short form, glib rhetoric that kind of has devolved. And so my thank, and there's no escaping it. We were talking about whether it's the 3-hour speech last night or whatever else. It's just we're so inundated by it. So my thank is actually going to be for Elon Musk and Jon Stewart, because if we're going to get stuck watching a bunch of garbage discourse, the idea of a long form interview, conversation amongst those two. I mean, I know you mentioned being a fan of Rogan and those kind of conversations, and
I'm also a fan of Jon Stewart.
Space.
Yeah,
I'm also a big fan of Jon.
But this is one thing where there's risk to that, and I think we've seen so many public folks try to avoid those things, and so my thing is just that if we're going to get stuck watching a lot of the garbage, that at least these two, I'm optimistic, is going to give us something to react to, and there's risk in both of them in putting themselves in that position. So we'll see how it goes. Get your popcorn ready.
Yeah.
In my
I'll be watching.
In my spank, kind of comes out of some of the comments from this president's speech last night. My spank is for the country of Greenland, or the territory of Greenland.
Whatever they are.
How do they not want some of this? What kind of short-sighted, foolhardy...
You could be 51, baby.
Community, like, how would you not...
Invited in last
right?
night. Come on over.
You would think. I mean, you know... I just think they're going to...
I want the green.
Just come on in.
Exactly.
I gotta think that other folks are like, other areas are like, really? Like Guam is like, seriously? They can just come out, they can just walk on over. They're in.
But so...
Think they can walk over from Guam?
No, for Greenland.
Oh, okay.
Greenland. They can't walk from there either.
The elected leadership of
Unless there
Greenland
was
is
some
officially
sort of an
spanked.
ice bridge. Yeah, you're right. That's a great one.
All right, I will try
Oh, get her, lawyer. We've got a picture.
to screen
Suspect.
screen
We'll
grab
just
that.
put that in the file. Put that picture in the file, please, Gabe.
So I'm actually going to just have one spank because I don't want to detract from the spank. So this week, a Maple Grove student passed away after had a medical incident after practicing, and this is something that is happening more and more across Minnesota. One of the largest causes of deaths with young people are athletics-related cardiac arrest and other things. We had another death. This is something that definitely needs to be addressed. This is something that the American Heart Association, who I do work for, is looking to bring forth at the Capitol this year, is having cardiac emergency response plans, something that just makes it so whether you are a player, a coach, a student, a referee, cheerleader, anybody, that should you have a medical emergency, that there is a plan in place and an AED within a reasonable, accessible, having to be accessible, that you're able to reach it in a reasonable amount of time, and hopefully we can prevent this from happening to the next person. So. I'm not spanking anyone for not being prepared. I don't know the specifics of this, but this is just something that we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure that our students are safe as they're participating in sports and everyone is watching. So with that, I am GOP strategist and Twin City Sugar, Brian McDaniel.
And I am former Republican Senate Majority Leader, Lisa Damuth fangirl, Amy Koch.
And I am public television star Allison Nessie.
I am DFL lawyer lobbyist Matthew Bergeron.
And we are
Wrong
About Everything.
Go Greenland.
How could you not want some of this?